In the world, the man who suffered the most pain stood face to face with the man who had never suffered any pain at all. But what would happen after 168 hours would shock everyone and change everything they believed about strength forever. David Goggins stared across the meditation hall at Lama Chen, the Tibetan master whose serene smile had captivated 2 billion followers worldwide. "Mr. Goggins," Chen said in his soft, accented English, "you have spent your entire life swimming in an ocean of unnecessary suffering. Today, I will show you the path to true strength through inner peace." David's jaw clenched as he realized this wasn't just a philosophical debate, this was war between two completely opposite ways of living, and only one could be right. Lama Chen had arrived in America 3 months earlier, his reputation preceding him like a tidal wave of spiritual enlightenment. At 62 years old, he had spent 4 decades in Tibetan monasteries, mastering meditation techniques that supposedly allowed him to transcend all physical and emotional pain. His followers claimed he had once meditated for 30 days straight without food or water, that he could slow his heartbeat to nearly nothing, and that he had achieved a state of permanent bliss that made him immune to any form of suffering. When his people reached out to David Goggins for this public challenge, they framed it as an opportunity to educate the Western world about true strength. The challenge was simple in concept but brutal in execution. Both men would attempt to achieve the same goal through completely opposite methods. For 7 straight days, they would endure identical stressors: extreme cold, sleep deprivation, hunger, and physical discomfort, but Chen would use meditation and mindfulness while David would use his trademark mental toughness and embrace of suffering. The event would be live-streamed to millions, with expert judges monitoring their vital signs, stress hormones, and psychological state throughout the week. David had accepted the challenge immediately, not because he wanted to prove anything to the world, but because something about Lama Chen's serene confidence had triggered every competitive instinct in his body. This monk was essentially claiming that David's entire life philosophy, that pain was the pathway to strength, was not just wrong, but primitive and unnecessary. "You Americans are so violent with yourselves," Chen had said during their first meeting. "You think strength comes from breaking yourself down. Real strength comes from never being broken in the first place." But what shocked everyone was the dark secret hidden in Lama Chen's peaceful past. The live stream began on a Monday morning at a neutral facility in Colorado, with both men entering identical isolation chambers equipped with environmental controls and medical monitoring. The first challenge was extreme cold. Both chambers would be dropped to 35 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 hours straight. David immediately began his mental preparation, talking to himself, embracing the coming discomfort, getting his mind ready to push through the pain. In the adjacent chamber, Lama Chen simply sat in lotus position, closed his eyes, and began breathing with the slow, measured rhythm of someone entering deep meditation. For the first hour, both men seemed comfortable. David paced his chamber, doing jumping jacks and push-ups to generate body heat, his breath visible in the frigid air. Chen remained motionless, his breathing so slow and controlled that the medical monitors showed his metabolism dropping to levels that amazed the supervising doctors. The live stream chat exploded with debates between David's followers, who called him the toughest man alive, and Chen's disciples, who insisted their master had transcended the need for physical struggle entirely. By hour 3, the differences in their approaches became stark. David was visibly shivering now, his body fighting the cold while his mind pushed through the discomfort with aggressive self-talk. "Come on, motherfucker," he muttered to himself, loud enough for the microphones to pick up. "This is nothing. You've been through worse. Embrace this shit." Meanwhile, Chen appeared to be in a state of such deep meditation that his body temperature readings showed minimal variation from normal, as if he had somehow convinced his nervous system that the cold simply didn't exist. The medical team monitoring both men was baffled by Chen's readings. His cortisol levels, the stress hormone that typically spikes during physical discomfort, remained at baseline levels throughout the entire 12-hour cold exposure. His heart rate variability suggested a state of complete calm, while brain scans showed the kind of theta wave activity associated with deep, restorative meditation. David's readings, by contrast, showed all the expected signs of a body under severe stress, even though he was clearly handling the challenge with his typical mental toughness. This is where everything started to unravel, and the truth began to emerge. The second day brought sleep deprivation combined with extreme heat. Both chambers were heated to 95 degrees while the men were required to stay awake for 36 straight hours. David attacked this challenge the same way he approached everything, with aggressive determination and constant mental reinforcement. He did burpees, talked to himself, and used every psychological trick he'd learned to stay alert and push through the exhaustion and heat. Chen, once again, simply sat in meditation, appearing as calm and centered as if he were in an air-conditioned temple. But something was bothering Dr. Sarah Martinez, the neuroscientist monitoring the challenge. Chen's brain activity during this second phase showed patterns she'd never seen before, not just the expected meditation states, but something that looked almost artificial. When she compared his readings to baseline human responses, certain neurochemical markers were completely absent. It was as if his brain wasn't registering the stressors at all, which should have been impossible given the severity of the environmental challenges. Meanwhile, David was clearly suffering but pushing through with the kind of mental fortitude that had made him famous. His internal monologue, picked up by the chamber's microphones, revealed the brutal psychological battle he was fighting. "Your mind is lying to you," he told himself hour after hour. "This heat, this exhaustion, it's all temporary. You've survived worse than this. Stay hard, stay focused, push through the weakness." His followers watching the live stream were inspired by his raw determination, but Chen's supporters pointed to their master's apparent serenity as proof of a superior approach to strength. By day 3, the physical challenges escalated to near extreme levels. Both men were subjected to a combination of ice baths, high-altitude simulation, and nutritional restriction that would have broken most people within hours. David's response was exactly what everyone expected. He gritted his teeth, embraced the suffering, and used his anger and determination to power through each challenge. His body was clearly under enormous stress, but his mind remained unbroken, pushing him forward through sheer force of will. But then Dr. Martinez made a discovery that would change everything. During a routine medical check on day 4, Dr. Martinez noticed something unusual about Chen's blood work. Hidden among the normal markers was a trace amount of a synthetic compound she didn't immediately recognize. When she ran it through the lab's database, what she found made her blood run cold. It was a powerful experimental drug developed by the Chinese military for special operations, designed to suppress the nervous system's pain response and block stress hormone production. Chen wasn't achieving transcendence through meditation. He was chemically blocking his body's ability to feel discomfort. The implications were staggering. For 40 years, Lama Chen had been presenting himself as a master of mental discipline who had transcended human limitations through spiritual practice. In reality, he had been using advanced pharmaceuticals to create the illusion of supernatural calm and pain tolerance. Every miracle demonstration, every impossible feat of endurance that had convinced 2 billion followers it was all fake, the result of military-grade chemical enhancement disguised as enlightenment. Dr. Martinez faced an impossible dilemma. Exposing Chen would destroy the faith of billions of people and potentially cause international incidents, given his connections to various governments and religious organizations. But allowing the fraud to continue meant David Goggins, who was achieving his results through genuine mental toughness, would be defeated by a man who was essentially cheating with performance-enhancing drugs. You haven't seen the most shocking revelation yet. On day 5, the challenges reached their peak intensity. Both men were subjected to a combination of physical and psychological stressors that pushed human endurance to its absolute limits. David was running on pure mental determination now, his body clearly at its breaking point, but his mind refusing to quit. Every breath was a battle, every moment a conscious choice to continue fighting when every instinct screamed at him to stop. His live stream audience could see the real struggle in his eyes. This was genuine human determination at its rawest. Chen, meanwhile, maintained his serene composure with what everyone believed was superhuman mental discipline. His vital signs remained stable, his demeanor calm, his breathing controlled. To his millions of followers, this was proof that their master had achieved a level of consciousness that transcended ordinary human limitations. The contrast between David's obvious struggle and Chen's apparent ease was becoming the story of the challenge. But Dr. Martinez had been conducting her own investigation into Chen's background, and what she discovered was even more disturbing than the drug use. Hidden records from Chinese military archives showed that Chen had been part of a classified super-soldier program in the 1980s, where volunteers were subjected to experimental procedures designed to enhance human performance. The program had been shut down after several subjects died, but Chen had survived and apparently continued using the enhancement protocols throughout his supposed spiritual journey. The peaceful Tibetan monk was actually a product of military experimentation, his entire persona carefully constructed to hide his artificial enhancement. His decades in monasteries hadn't been about spiritual development, they'd been about perfecting his cover story while continuing to benefit from chemical and possibly surgical modifications that gave him superhuman stress tolerance. Hold on, you need to hear what happened when David figured it out. By day 6, David was operating on a level of mental toughness that amazed even his most devoted followers. His body was clearly near collapse, but his mind continued to drive him forward with the kind of determination that seemed to defy basic human limitations. During his brief medical checks, he would mutter things like, "This is what real strength looks like," and "No shortcuts, no excuses, just pure fucking will." The contrast with Chen's effortless calm was becoming more pronounced by the hour. That's when David noticed something that Dr. Martinez had missed. During one of Chen's meditation periods, David caught a glimpse of what looked like a small injection site on the monk's arm, barely visible but consistent with regular pharmaceutical administration. David's years of military training had taught him to notice details that others missed, and this tiny detail triggered his suspicion that something wasn't right about Chen's performance. David began watching Chen more carefully, and what he saw disturbed him. The man's breathing, while appearing controlled and meditative, followed patterns that seemed almost mechanical. His responses to environmental changes were too perfect, too consistent with what someone might achieve through chemical suppression rather than mental discipline. David had spent years learning to read people's genuine reactions to stress, and Chen's responses felt artificial. During a brief interaction between their chambers, David confronted Chen directly. "You know what I think?" David said, his voice hoarse from days of stress but his eyes sharp with intelligence. "I think you're full of shit. I think whatever you're doing, it's not meditation, and it's not mental toughness. Real strength doesn't look that easy." Chen's response was the first crack in his serene facade. For just a moment, something dangerous flashed in his eyes before the peaceful mask returned. "Mr. Goggins, your Western mind cannot comprehend the depths of true spiritual achievement. What you call impossible, I call Tuesday afternoon." But David's military instincts were about to uncover the truth that would shock the world. On the final day, both men faced the ultimate challenge, a combination of all previous stressors plus psychological pressure designed to break even the strongest minds. David was running on pure mental determination now, his body clearly at its absolute limit but his spirit unbroken. Every fiber of his being screamed in protest, but his mind continued to push forward with the kind of authentic human strength that had defined his entire life. It was during this final push that Dr. Martinez approached David during a medical break with information that would change everything. "David," she whispered, "I need you to know something about your opponent. The blood work shows he's been using synthetic compounds to block pain and stress responses. This whole thing is a fraud." David's reaction was immediate and explosive. "You mean this motherfucker has been cheating this whole time while I'm out here actually suffering?" The revelation hit him like a physical blow, not because he was losing, but because millions of people were watching what they believed was a legitimate comparison between two philosophies of strength. But David's response surprised everyone, including Dr. Martinez. Instead of demanding immediate disqualification, David made a decision that would define his legacy. "Don't tell anyone yet," he said quietly. "Let me finish this thing the right way. Let me show people what real strength looks like when it's standing next to fake strength." The final hours of the challenge became a masterclass in authentic human determination. David pushed through the last phase knowing that his opponent was chemically enhanced, knowing that the comparison was unfair, but choosing to demonstrate genuine mental toughness anyway. His performance during those final hours, captured on live stream and witnessed by millions, became legendary among those who understood what was really happening. Now comes the moment that exposed everything and changed the game forever. As the 7-day challenge ended, both men emerged from their chambers to face the final evaluation. Chen appeared as serene and composed as when he'd started, showing no signs of the ordeal he'd supposedly endured. David, by contrast, looked like he'd been through hell because he actually had. His eyes were hollow with exhaustion, his body clearly pushed to its limits, but his spirit remained unbroken. The contrast was stark and, to those who didn't know the truth, seemed to support Chen's claims about the superiority of meditation over mental toughness. But as the medical team conducted their final evaluations, Dr. Martinez made her move. In front of the live cameras and global audience, she announced that she needed to share some critical findings about the challenge. Chen's face went pale as she began revealing the blood work results, the evidence of pharmaceutical enhancement, and the hidden military records that exposed his entire identity as a fraud. The revelation exploded across social media and news networks within minutes. 2 billion followers learned simultaneously that their spiritual master was actually a chemically enhanced former military test subject who had been faking enlightenment for decades. The monasteries, the meditation techniques, the transcendent wisdom, it was all an elaborate cover story for what was essentially performance-enhancing drug use on a spiritual scale. Chen's response to the exposure was the final proof of his deception. Instead of maintaining his peaceful demeanor, he flew into a rage that revealed his true nature. "You have no idea what you've done!" he screamed at Dr. Martinez and David. "Do you know how many governments are invested in my success? How many organizations depend on the illusion I've created? You think this is about truth? This is about power, and you've just destroyed something bigger than your small minds can comprehend." David's response was classic Goggins, direct, authentic, and devastating. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" he said, his voice still hoarse but carrying absolute authority. "When I suffer, it's real. When I push through pain, it's because my mind is actually stronger than my circumstances. You've been faking strength for 40 years while I've been building it every single day. That's the difference between a warrior and a fraud." And the final revelation about Chen's network was the most shocking of all. As investigators dug deeper into Chen's background following the exposure, they uncovered something even more disturbing than individual fraud. Chen wasn't working alone, he was part of a massive international network of fake spiritual teachers, each using various forms of enhancement to create the illusion of superhuman abilities. The network included supposed masters of martial arts, meditation, extreme physical feats, and psychological disciplines, all using hidden technology or pharmaceuticals to fool their followers. The spiritual enhancement conspiracy reached into governments, tech companies, and military organizations around the world. Chen's exposure triggered a domino effect that brought down dozens of other fraudulent teachers and revealed a systematic effort to control human consciousness through fake enlightenment. What had started as a simple challenge between two approaches to strength had uncovered a global deception affecting billions of people. David found himself at the center of a movement that demanded authentic human achievement over artificial enhancement. His willingness to compete against a chemically enhanced opponent while maintaining his integrity became a symbol for genuine human potential. Speaking to reporters after Chen's network was exposed, David summarized the situation with typical clarity. "People want to believe in shortcuts to strength, whether it's drugs, technology, or fake spiritual bullshit. But real strength can't be faked, can't be bought, and can't be enhanced. It has to be earned through actual struggle, actual pain, and actual determination." The aftermath of the challenge changed how people thought about human potential and spiritual achievement. David's authentic demonstration of mental toughness, shown in direct contrast to Chen's artificial enhancement, proved that genuine human strength was more impressive than any fake transcendence. The man who had suffered real pain and built real strength had triumphed over the illusion of effortless superiority. And in the end, David's victory proved that sometimes the hardest path really is the only path to authentic strength.